All right, so the next two speakers come from a cookware brand that you've seen everywhere. One is called Made In, and the other speaker is coming from Tatari. Tatari runs probably majority of the really cool brands that you see and admire, direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands running on TV. So please give it up for Greg and Chip.
We are here today to talk about how TV became a critical acquisition channel for Made In. My name is Greg Kalin. I'm a director of client development at Tatari. I work with Chip over here. I'll pass it over to for 3 or 4 years.
Hey, thanks for joining the conversation. I'm Chip Malt, co-founder and CEO of Made in Cookware. We've been a Tatari client for about 4 years and running TV ads for about 4-ish of our 5 years in existence.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about each of our companies. Tatari is a platform for buying and measuring TV ads across linear and streaming TV. You could think Facebook Campaign Manager for TV campaigns. You can buy these TV ads and run these campaigns yourself, or you can work with our managed service team, who really serves as an additional arm to your marketing team, providing that additional layer of support. We have worked with hundreds of brands, as you all heard earlier, that are new to TV. We run campaigns for legacy TV advertisers, first-time TV looking to test into it, Super Bowl campaigns, and everything in between.
Yeah, and just a little bit of background about us. We're a professional quality cookware brand, kitchenware brand. Started in 2017, first full year in business in 2018. Really handcrafted professional quality tools. A lot of the best chefs in the country, a ton of LA chefs, Michelin star chefs use our stuff. So we felt like TV in general was a perfect opportunity to tell a lot of those rich stories. 5th generation knife makers who make our knives, 200-year-old clay manufacturers who make our plateware, et cetera. Some of these deep, rich craftsmanship stories that we felt was a little bit belittled on some other channels, display, Facebook, et cetera, and wanted that big audience and big storytelling environment for TV. So a couple stats on there, but we've been able to scale through TV as one of our main channels, and we're excited to talk about it today.
So tell us a little bit about what your mix looks like.
Yeah, so I think a lot of, we started in 2018, we started kind of probably where everyone here started, right? It's Facebook, Google, some of the main channels. Back in that time, TikTok, et cetera, didn't exist. Some influencer work, but also on those channels as well as our main distribution and growth areas. I think what made us special in terms of our kind of marketing mix, and special meaning different, was that we entered TV super young. Again, as a brand, we thought we had a lot of conviction that we wanted to tell our story in a bigger medium. So before we were 10 million in revenue, really like in that first year-ish of business, we entered our testing phase of TV, which probably is early for a lot of people you work with. You know, we believed a lot in surround sound for our brand, so we had some podcasts, some radio, but TV was really the main anchor of that channel mix, kind of through that end of first year into second year and beyond.
Yeah, and like you said, it wasn't always that way, and you know, both you and I went through a lot of trials and tribulations together, just kind of going through that journey and really figuring out how to scale it for you guys. So what we're kind of going to take you guys through today is what I like to refer to as the TV journey, and we've broken it out into 4 phases here: how to approach testing, finding new audiences, optimizing your creatives, and then ultimately the most important, which is scaling. We'll start in the logical place, how to approach testing. So I think a common misconception is it's expensive to start on TV. But Chip, that was not the case for you necessarily. So why don't you talk about your approach to what a test for TV looked like?
Yeah, so there you go. Is that better? All right. For us, you know, I think you look through a podcast testing kind of plan or anything like that, you're generally in that 50 to 100K range to get a good feel for a channel. We talked to a really good friendly brand who was a massive TV advertiser, and they told us, make sure when you go into TV that you come out with something that's a concrete learning that would help you figure out if you wanted to be on that channel long term and be on that channel as an evergreen channel. For us, you know, we sat in as a brand team and as a performance marketing team and said, you know, what would be a really interesting first learning for us? We're a cookware brand. Obviously, something we love about the cookware space is that food content is so huge, both on Instagram and and Pinterest and TV, Top Chef, et cetera. Would our product resonate in a contextual environment on TV more than a control environment? And that was the first thing we wanted to learn. Obviously, there was day parts and a bunch of other creative tests we were doing at the same time, but that was the main thing we wanted to think through is could we make this work in a contextual environment? So we spent about $75K on linear TV, Food Networks, cooking channels, some HGTV that had more of a cooking home focused, and then a control set of networks, some news networks, et cetera. CNN and so on. And then a streaming kind of side test, which was more for a growth channel, which we'll talk about later.
I want to just quickly highlight that streaming test specifically because I think there's a lot of brands that they've heard about CTV, they want to come to test CTV, and the way they think about it is, well, I know this audience works for me, and so I'm going to go out and target that audience programmatically on CTV, and I'm going to see if it works or not, right? You took a much different approach, and that's something we do at Tatari, so maybe just go into that a little bit.
Yeah, we're super CPM sensitive on prospecting channels, and I actually hate the programmatic space in TV. In general, you get $30, $40, $25 CPMs. It's really expensive, and you have to really believe that the targeting on a CTV network for prospecting in particular is going to work to pay up for those CPMs. Since we were a young brand, again, we were just over our first year in business. We couldn't afford to just lose $100,000, right? I think a lot of us, that resonates with a lot of people. We wanted this to perform for us as well. And so we were testing in these channels, being super CPM conscious, using Tatari's media deals and PMP deals with a Hulu, so $11 CPMs I think we were buying Hulu for. Programmatic on Hulu was probably 32 or 33. So both we wanted to test a channel on a streaming channel, but we also wanted it to perform to make sure that we were hitting our KPIs and numbers.
Cool. All right. Well, now let's move on to those results. And look, to no one's surprise, a cookware product did do better on the food and cooking channels. We'll get into more about how we were able to kind of lower these CPVs and make this an evergreen channel for you as we get through the presentation. But I want to start by focusing on the non-contextual audiences because those are not as good, yet you did not stop there. And so why don't you speak to, your desire to continue expanding?
Yeah, I think what we loved about this test was, obviously, out the gate, it's not the exact economics that we would have wanted from an acquisition channel, right? The numbers objectively are higher, but it proved exactly what we had gone in asking for, that contextual advertising, and we were resonating better on contextual-based channels than non-contextual-based. So we had a starting point for where we wanted to optimize after that, which is what we'll get into a little bit later. But I think what makes it really exciting for TV as a whole is that there was also the non-contextual wasn't that bad, so it gave us hope for scale. We couldn't continue to pay the same CPMs or operate in the same way during the test on non-contextual, but we would find ways that we could open up kind of the scale of non-contextual after. So really just an overall, encouragement building exercise on that first test, and we went from there.
Yeah, and so that leads us to our next phase of the journey here, which is finding those new audiences and expanding outside of just what that one core demographic was.
Yeah, so I think when we enter new channels, we think about obviously the ability to get those efficient and economically efficient towards the way we want them to, but also how much human capital effort is it going to be to scale those, and then how much scalability there is on the back end. And you think about something like podcasts, right? You find something that works, and then it's really hard to go find 15 more podcasts that are very similar to scale that up, right? TV is the exact opposite in some ways, which if you can find what works, it's actually pretty easy to go find 10, 15, 20 million more impressions on the back end. But the hard part is to figure out efficiently what is working. So we kind of had in our mindset, okay, contextual, we know we can get that to where we want it to be, the Food Networks, et cetera. Again, where there's a clear path to getting that to be efficient. Can we open up a whole other area of scale, which is non-contextual or just the rest of the TV ecosystem? 2020, we're sitting here, everyone's stuck at home, no one's doing anything, and live sports was our big conviction. That was one time where you could get away. You could tune into an event because you couldn't do anything else in your life, right? And there would be more eyeballs on live sports. Tatari came across with a last-minute fire sale deal, which Greg will talk about, and we were able to buy into the Home Run Derby, which was, I think, one of the first major live sports events coming back in the pandemic. And I think we were buying it at $2, $3, $4 CPMs for massive scale. And we were just interested to see if our cookware product would resonate to a baseball home run kind of meathead hitting contest, right? And I think you'll see.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was in Europe for a long time to try live sports. The price tag was very high, right? And we waited. I told you to stay opportunistic, and you did exactly that. And so we took advantage of this fire sale. And just to explain everyone what a fire sale is, essentially, big brands, they'll book out, premium inventory like this well in advance. But then something can happen, supply chain issue, whatever it could be, and they'll drop out at the last second. It creates this open ad slot, and they'll come to Tatari and say, "Hey, can you fill this ad slot for an 85% discount?" And someone like Chip will come along, take advantage of it. And that leads us kind of to where we can go from there. The results here kind of speak for themselves. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so obviously, again, that's 750 CPMs we saw earlier. We're working on some other stuff optimization-wise, but 55-cent CPVs are, I think, CPCs, most people would think about those as. Those are display-level CPCs. We were able to have massive spikes, 2,300 visitors at about 50 cents per, right? And that's super interesting for a brand like ours because you're sitting there thinking, okay, TV's interesting, but maybe it only works in a certain subset of TV, so the scale is not really there. And now you're sitting there seeing, okay, a TV audience that's watching baseball will actually positively respond to one of our ads. What else can we do in this space? How much further can we push this? So one of our first real proof points, and we'll get into a couple others, but.
Yeah, and so the question then became, right, we had the one spot in sports, well, how do we keep expanding there, right? And so it was about testing across and probing across linear and streaming. That's where that data can be so valuable, so you start to understand what's working and what doesn't. And so you built frequency on things like MLB TV or FS1, and then we stayed opportunistic for other live sports opportunities. We took advantage of the Rose Bowl through DirecTV. Chip, how many text messages did you get during that Fox NFC Championship game, which was Brady versus Rodgers?
Yeah, I'm a Boston guy, unfortunately, I think, for most people in the audience, but had to take up the opportunity to buy a Tom Brady NFC Championship game against Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's one of the cool parts about advertising on TV. It's really brand building. You get a lot of text messages from your friends, holy shit, I just saw your ad on NFC Championship, et cetera. It's one of the last few, I think, brand building advertising channels that we have remaining, so super cool to see.
Cool, yeah, and then we pretty much repeated the same playbook for news at that discount, and I know news was a critical part of what you wanted to do in 2020 as well.
Yeah, I think as a performance marketer by trade, right, like people are so used to being in the cycle of creative optimization on Facebook and just churning out Facebook this and that, and like that kind of cycle without much thought to it. TV is interesting, and it's actually a really fun challenge because it requires you to be a little bit more observant around behavioral patterns, what's happening in the world, et cetera. 2020, obviously, people, again, stuck at home, but also a huge divisive presidential race. And everyone, if you remember that time, was tuned into what the hell Trump was going to say. It was crazy. Like, it was the highlight of news probably in the last 3 years, right? And so we, not to exploit that, but we took advantage of the fact that that's where eyeballs were and continued to buy into these fireside deals and leading up to the election. The election in general was bidding up ad markets across all the ecosystems, Facebook, TV, et cetera. And we were able to find really opportunistic and efficient ways to capture eyeballs.
Again, 86% discount on ABC's World News. And then this is kind of one of those oh shit moments here when you see 8,000 people in your site after a 130-second spot. And so, again, $1 CPV, pretty good. We basically, again, repeated the same playbook, probing for audiences across streaming and linear, looking for those efficiencies, staying opportunistic, and so on and so forth. And so, look, there's so much TV inventory out there, right, and probably are wondering, well, where do I even start? But this is where Tatari can be so helpful because with our similar audience tool, we're able to use IP-level data to say, okay, we know where an MLB home run derby watcher is watching TV elsewhere, or we know where a World News watcher is watching TV elsewhere, whether it be on linear or streaming. We can go out and target those people to build frequency or build lookalike audiences to see if we can continue to perform against those people and build more scale. This was kind of a high-level overview of the results of Chip and Made In team as they were scaling up their TV campaign, right? And you can see spend, conversion rate, response rate all increasing as they're expanding their audiences.
Yeah, this is super interesting coming from traditional digital channels, I guess, because usually you see the exact reverse trend, right? If you're a Facebook marketer, Meta marketer, TikTok, et cetera, you're thinking and talking a lot about diminishing return curves over time. If you're pressing gas, how much worse is my CPA going to be over the next $10,000, over the next $50,000, right? On TV, you actually see the exact opposite trend. Actually, the more money you spend, the more frequency you hit on channels, and kind of the more established you get within the TV channel, response rates go up, conversion rates go up, et cetera. So, I think in Facebook world where you're always fighting the diminishing return curve, it's actually a really interesting scale, scale not problem for TV, which is cool.
Now this gets to our third phase, which I think is the single most important phase of executing a TV campaign, right? I think TV's been around for 70 years. It's proven out as a marketing channel. It's can you get your creative right? Can you get your messaging right? And that's exactly what Chip and team faced here.
And we're going to show our first TV creative here. Everything we do in-house, so I think there's a misconception about TV has to be, $200,000 agency costs and all this stuff. I mean, I think our first TV spot, which was bad, you'll see first here, we did for about $1,200. And then the second one, which is our top performing creative on the back end, we did for about $5,000. So, we use these shoots also for Facebook ads, for brand campaigns, et cetera. Like, there's really not much more to it, but I think you'll see the difference in kind of creating creative for the channel that it's actually going on. The first example is a very Facebook forward kind of DTC 1.0. This was 2017, so a little bit more in vogue then, versus a more epic brand building TV spot in 2022 and beyond. And we'll go through the results afterwards.
Today I'm going to be making brown butter shrimp and grits bowls.
A little bit of lemon juice right in with this butter, and that's it.
When you're feeding 500 people every day, there's no room for error. That's why I love Made in Cookware. As a chef and a restaurant owner, I'm as meticulous about my cookware as I am about my ingredients. Each pan they make isn't just designed to perform, it's crafted to last. But cookware is just as important on nights where I'm feeding 3. As a mom, I love that I can trust Made In. It's made from the world's finest materials, so I can feel good about what I'm feeding my family.
So as Greg mentioned, I mean, that first one is very Facebook-y, very DTC 1.0. That second one leverages Brooke Williamson, who's an LA-based chef. She was the winner of Top Chef, I think, season 14. She's all across Food Network, et cetera, so has some recognizability there. And just feels a lot more, I guess, premium and epic. And, when you're slotted in between a Progressive commercial that they spent $5 million producing and a Lexus commercial that they spent, $1 billion producing, right? Like, that first one feels really out of place. It feels really kind of brand diminishing. That second one feels like it's part of that conversation. So, we'll get into the results, but the creative portion of this whole conversation is absolutely important.
And this is what the beauty of having data behind these things can do. It's very easy for us to just flip in one creative and replace it with another. And so you can see here, you've got creative 1 spend, creative 2 spend, and as we shift over to creative 2, that cost per visitor drops 50-60%. And so again, this is the single biggest lever you can use to unlock scale in your TV campaigns. Cool. And so scale is really the last point here that we have to cover in our journey of TV advertising.
Yeah, so I think this is 2022 data. Starting out of 2020, you would have seen these blue and yellow numbers cross, right? At this point, we're driving 10, 15, 20 times more impressions on a channel like TV than we are on Facebook, or really any other channel, TikTok, et cetera. Google's the only one that's probably comparable at some point. So, when we think about entering a channel, all the effort, all the standing up of new BI systems, of just like the time it takes for a performance marketing and team to go through and enter a new channel, like that scale has to be there, and it is there on TV. And at this point, we're spending less time on TV creative than we are on Facebook, on TV campaign management than we are on Facebook, and it's driving 10, 15 times the amount of impressions. So a ton of scale.
Yeah, and again, another misconception, right, is linear is dead, TV is dead or dying, and it's just really not the case. Again, I think there's probably more scale there than really any other channel. And so one thing you have to sort of take into account as you're scaling up is changing market conditions, right? And so To kind of elaborate a little bit here, Tatari bids dynamically on spots on a weekly basis, and we refer to winning those bids as clearance. Sometimes clearance is harder during certain times of the year than others. A good example of that would be Q4, when there's a very high demand for ads and you've got a lot of holiday brands looking to push their product out. This is also a very critical time for Made In for their Black Friday, Cyber Monday period. And so we had to adjust our strategy here to make sure we're driving scale and to make sure we're driving that volume they need to have a successful Black Friday and Cyber Monday period. And so what we did was lock in inventory that we knew would be in high demand across premium set of content. We knew that could serve as an upper funnel prospecting lever and continue to fill that funnel as we're looking to convert as we get closer to those Black Friday, Cyber Monday periods. I don't know if there's anything you want to add here, Chip.
No, I think that just goes into the importance of using the first 3 quarters, using those fire sales for testing. You can get a feel for response rates by channel. So how are we going to perform? What's the response rate? 0.22 per impression on Hulu, 0.15 on Peacock, et cetera. Now we're talking about pre-buys for Q4. You can feel comfortable about those results and locking in those results for Q4. So exactly what we did, leverage those fire sale opportunities to get a feel for the market and response rates by channel, and then use those to kind of lock in stuff for Black Friday and holiday.
So we'll look at the results here of that Q4 period. And if you're wondering really what the difference is between Tatari and other TV providers like a Bliss Point or like a Mountain, this is really it right here. It's the combination of linear and streaming together, being able to measure them holistically and then leverage them on top of each other, right? So think about the strategy that we were able to execute on. We locked in all this premium content across this high reach, linear and streaming, top TV shows that everyone's watching, right? And through that, we're able to create awareness and consideration and then drive those viewers down the funnel through programmatic retargeting and then in turn increase the overall conversions, right? So by doing this, we increased that retargeting pool by 400K or more in that high reach inventory that we bought. And then again, leverage the streaming information that we have from those audiences to go out and target those exact same people on programmatic CTV, and in turn, that of course increased conversions by 4.5x.
A construct that everyone who's a Facebook marketer, a meta marketer, any digital marketers is acutely familiar with, right? It's you build up the top of the funnel through high reach, through low CPM, through high click-through rate kind of stuff, and then you use a retargeting methods across the ecosystem to get them across the finish line.
Cool. That does wrap up most of our presentation here. I'll quickly run through these few bullet points. So first takeaway, you can buy and measure TV just like digital, right? And you can do that across the streaming and linear landscape with Tatari. You can also find incremental audiences that you did not know would work for you, just like Chip did with sports or with live news. One of the most important things about TV, which can get lost in all the data, is as the single most powerful brand performance channel that exists today, right? You can spend $10 in an Instagram ad and you can order that product and you feel like you get ripped off because it ends up being a lot cheaper, right? But when you're on TV, think Super Bowl is the extreme example. That elevates your brand. It puts you in a different class. It gives your brand a certain prestige. And again, TV is really the only place you can do that. And then last but not least, this can be done in an evergreen way. That's Tatari's goal. Every dollar you put in, we want to make sure it's a dollar back in profit for you. And so again, that's the key to unlocking this in the way that Chip has. That wraps things up for us. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you.